The Heat lost Game 6 in Miami. Now, look, I understand that the Heat are good and that they got a 3-0 lead and that that's awesome, but let's face it, what is going on? Look, I'm sorry. A 3-0 lead should only be a catalyst for you to win one game, make it competitive for the other team, not a way to get blown out the next two games after you take the lead. And at home, by the way, in your own home, in which you haven't lost in the entire playoffs, and then lose by 13 points the next game. I want to say that this game, if you actually watched it, there were a few things that stood out. First, it looked like the entire Heat team was just hella trash, right? Like the only player who looked redeeming was Duncan Robinson, and he was playing phenomenally, but he had too many fouls, right? And then Bam looked like he was gassed, looked like he didn't want to play basketball. And of course, we all know that Bam is always going to be efficient, but efficient and good are two different things. Then you had guys like Hayward Highsmith, which actually played really well. And what I want to say is that the stars need to step up for Miami. Kyle Lowry, 5 points as a starter who played 30 minutes and 1 assist on 2 for 6 shooting with 4 turnovers. Bam Adebayo, 6 turnovers. Jimmy Butler had 14 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists. Now, looking at all this, it looked like Miami. Oh, and Max Strus shot 1 for 5 from the field with 3 points, and Kevin Love shot 3 for 7 from the field with 6 points. All of this to say that they only lost by 13. I'm not saying that to blow smoke up Miami's. If y'all know that quote, then I can't finish it. But I'm not saying that to blow smoke up Miami, but they looked good. They looked really good for a team who looked deficient, right? They were not doing anything wrong. And even though their stars were not playing well, right, they still shot 50% from the field and 40% from three. The biggest problem for them in this game, apart from free throws, in which they made 6 less than Boston, was the turnover problem, right? Miami had 16 turnovers this game to Boston's 9. And also, Boston shot more shots on the same efficiency, right? And they also shot more three-point shots on better efficiency. So, really, the problem for Miami in this game was two key things: the turnovers and the personal fouls. Miami played a solid game. If you looked at the game, then there were times where they looked awesome, there were times where they looked like they were dying. But with that being said, Boston played a phenomenal game. And I'm not saying that to just prop Miami up, but 4 of the 5 starters from Boston had 20 plus points, and they ended up with 110 points for the game. That means that you at least had, because each one got the 21 or more, that means you at least had 84 points from those guys combined. What I want to say from this is that even though, yes, their stars stepped out, Jason Tatum played great, even though he didn't shoot well from 3, right? Jaylen Brown was awesome this game, and Derek White was insanely good also, and they all had a positive plus minus. What I do want to say is that these guys had to put their entire starting lineup being on fire just so they could win one game. Al Horford had game-turning moments. He had great rebounds. He had that one block off the glass where Marcus Smart hit the layup off the glass and then Al dunked it, right? Then you had the alley-oop. I think it was Derek White with Robert Williams. But in my opinion, the biggest problem with the Heat is that if you actually watch the game, they just looked slow and unassertive. For most of the Heat's games this year, right, except for some of the Knicks games, their biggest problem when is that some games they would come in looking like the most confident, most dominant team in the world, and that sometimes they would come in looking pretty badly, right? And I think this has to do with confidence level, right? With the Knicks, I think that they only lost that they only went to 6 games with the Knicks because they were pretty comfortable that they were going to beat them due to the Knicks only having made the playoffs once, right? With this core of Jalen Brunson, R.J. Barrett, and Julius Randle. With that being said, they still went to 6 games and finished New York off. And I think that when Miami gets comfortable, they just play a notch down, right? Which shows in the way that they're treating this series. Let's face it, no one believes that Miami will lose this series. They were up 3-0. Statistically, it's almost impossible for that to happen. And if these Celtics are the ones to actually win in a game 7, right, then so be it, right? Like, if they actually do it, then we'll congratulate them, and then so be it. Miami's miracle 8th-seeded run is over, and Jimmy Butler is officially certified as a Hall of Famer because he is so amazing in the playoffs. But if they do advance to the finals, then they're going to be facing up against Denver. And let's face it, Miami needs a lot of energy, a lot of potency, and a lot of consistency to play against Denver. And I still don't think that even with all of that, they're going to win. Miami's raw. Miami's untapered. Miami's good. But Miami are not good enough to win the championship this year. And that's coming from a Miami Heat fan. I'm a fan. I hope that they win. And I want them to win. But if we're being realistic as fans, as players, as coaches, as whoever's watching, playing, or being in the game, Miami has no chance of winning against that Denver Nuggets team. They don't have enough defense to lock all of those guys up. They don't have enough offense to shoot those guys out, play those guys out. And even though they have the most clutch player arguably in the NBA, they do not have that X factor, right? Like, Miami's awesome, but their X factors, they're undrafted players, right? But the Nuggets have Jamal Murray, and they have Nikola Jokic. That might be the best duo in the league just off straight performances and way that they play together. And honestly, I don't know if Miami at this pace could even make it to the finals if they keep playing like this. I believe that Miami has been great, but they have been comfortable. They're waiting for their game at home. And honestly, even though I do love that this game, we had a down game and we still managed to shoot very efficiently, I do believe that Miami has to get their act straight. What are you doing? Like, you win 3 games in a row and all it takes is going hard on one game to close it out, and then you guys just decide to sleep. They won a game in Miami, the Boston Celtics, and I believe that it's time to also give the Celtics some praise. And Joe Mazzulla some praise. I know that I give Joe Mazzulla a lot of hate. And that's just because I believe that he's a really bad coach who shouldn't be coaching a championship caliber team. I think that he maybe could coach the Houston Rockets, and he would probably do a better job than their coach that they have right now. But I think that his adjustments are mostly really bad. But this game, I have to surrender, and I have to say, shout out to him. He was playing great defensive lineups. Their offense looked fluid with always having a shooter on the wing, and they looked like they were taking good shots all the time. Like, the shot selection was pretty neat. They weren't taking stupid or flawed shots, which might have not gotten them the best opportunity. They were actually having sound opportunities. I say all this to say that I want to give my apologies to Joe Mazzulla, but I also want to say that Miami has to be better. I know I've said it, and I know it's a fact, but if Miami keeps playing this comfortably, like they already won the series, like they can just kick their feet back and win, then Tatum and Boston might actually take the series. The point of what good teams do is that they'll go, and when they're up in a series, they'll finish the series. And that's just how it works. But let's face it, Miami's not finishing this series soon. Maybe next game in Miami, but Jimmy Butler needs to start caring about winning this series so that he can go on to the finals. And if he wins or loses, and that's up to when the finals are played. And let's face it, if the Miami Heat win this championship, it will be one of the greatest rings of all time. They're not going to, but it will be. So, can the Celtics come back? Is it possible for them to snag this series? And will Miami keep playing this comfortably, or will they actually activate for next game in Miami? Let's see, and I think the Nuggets are going to win the finals.